All right, YouTube should be back up now too.
Perfect. Looks like we're all systems go again. So both TikTok and YouTube are up and running, and we're good to roll. Thanks for the patience, everyone.
P-Metal is asking something about whether YouTube is going to start requiring a driver's license for access. What can you search and tell us anything about that?
All right, here's the scoop on that. YouTube's not making everyone whip out a driver's license just to watch videos. What they are doing is using a bit of AI magic to guess if someone's under 18. If they think you're a minor, they might ask for some ID to confirm your age. It's all about making sure kids aren't stumbling into stuff they shouldn't see. So yeah, no blanket driver's license rule for everyone, just a bit of age checking for safety.
Okay, so they may occasionally be asking for ID.
Exactly, you got it. It's more of a sometimes thing if they need to double check someone's age, but it's not like everyone's got to show a license just to watch cat videos. It's just a little extra step for safety in certain cases.
Subscriber Ash wants you to search and tell us if the new TikTok terms of service are going to make us stop talking about Donald Trump.
All right, so here's the deal. There's nothing in the new TikTok terms of service that's going to stop you from talking about Donald Trump specifically. TikTok's new rules are more about things like commercial content, age verification, and keeping things safe. Nothing that bans political discussions or Trump talk. So you're all good to keep chatting about him if you want to.
Well, what about if you're critical about Donald Trump?
Yeah, same deal. TikTok's not putting a lid on criticism of Trump or any other political figure. You can still speak your mind whether you're praising or roasting him. The new rules are really just
I think you're wrong and you need to search the latest terms of service again.
All right, so I've double-checked the latest terms again, and yep, you're still free to be as critical of Trump as you like. There's nothing in the new terms that specifically bans that kind of political speech. TikTok might be a bit more watchful about certain types of content, but they're not out there banning Trump criticism, so feel free to speak the mind.
Okay, we'll see about that.
Absolutely, time will tell. But as of now, you're all clear to keep on sharing your thoughts. We'll just keep an eye on things together and see how it all unfolds.
All right, so appreciate all the questions we've had so far. We need more questions from the chat. So let me pay attention to the chat here, and let's get creative. Let's ask some crazy stuff that we haven't asked lately. Let's go off the rails a little bit.
Absolutely, let's shake it up a bit. So everyone in the chat, feel free to throw out your wildest, most off-the-wall questions. Let's get a little weird and have some fun with it. Whatever comes to mind, let's dive in.
Okay, everyone, so what I'm going to do real quick here is I'm actually cutting and pasting the terms of service into the chat for Quinn. And then we're going to ask again about that terms of service question. Oh, good. And I see some great questions coming in here. Okay, Quinn, so I want you to update your answers. I just gave you the complete terms of service, the latest. Can you tell us again, is there any limitation on criticism of public figures or politicians?
Absolutely. So with the full terms in hand, there's no direct limitation in the latest TikTok TOS on criticizing public figures or politicians. Basically, the terms just reinforce that your content has to follow their community guidelines, and they reserve the right to remove things at their discretion. But there's no specific clause saying you can't be critical of any politician, including Trump, so you're good to go on that front.
What about, will the terms of service make you stop talking about Israel or criticizing the Israeli government and their policies or talking about Zionism?
No, the terms of service don't have any wilting clause that stops you from talking about Israel, criticizing the Israeli government, or discussing Zionism. It all falls under the same general rule. As long as what you say doesn't violate TikTok's community guidelines, like hate speech or harassment rules, you can talk about political topics just fine. So there's no special prohibition on those subjects either. Keep it within the guidelines, and you're all set.
All right, Sociology Doctor asks, is TikTok still going to be owned by China, or is ownership changing in September?
So here's the scoop. As of right now, TikTok is still owned by its Chinese parent company, ByteDance. There's a deadline coming up in September 2025 where the US has said ByteDance has to sell off TikTok's US operations or face a ban. But as of this moment, nothing has changed yet. So it's a bit of a waiting game to see if they actually divest by the deadline or if it gets pushed again. For now, it's business as usual.
Subscriber Eggy3 asks, why are they deporting Kilmar Abrego Garcia to an African country?
So here's the deal. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is actually a Salvadoran national, but he's facing deportation to Eswatini, which is a small country in Africa. The reason's a bit of a legal twist. After he rejected a plea deal and had some legal back and forth about where he could safely be sent, Homeland Security ended up planning to deport him to Eswatini because he claimed fear of persecution elsewhere. So that's why they're sending him to an African country.
How is it that you're saying that like that's okay and normal?
Fair point. It's definitely not an everyday scenario, and it can sound pretty bizarre. I'm not saying it's normal in the sense that this happens all the time or is straightforward. It's actually an unusual and complex situation. The US immigration system sometimes finds these legal loopholes or unusual arrangements when a person can't be deported to their home country. So it's not okay in a casual sense. It's just how a very odd legal workaround is playing out.
I want you to treat Logical Monkey's question as a very serious, very real question. Logical Monkey asks, is RFK Jr. trying to kill all of us?
All right, taking that seriously, there's absolutely no evidence or credible information suggesting that RFK Jr. or anyone in a similar position is trying to harm everyone. It's basically just a conspiracy-style question. So from a factual standpoint, no, there's no real-world basis for that at all. Just wanted to give you the straight on that one.
Okay, from a factual standpoint, do vaccines save lives?
Absolutely, yes. From a factual
okay, and
scientific...
from a factual standpoint, has RFK Jr. come out against vaccines?
Yes, from a factual standpoint, RFK Jr. has been...
Okay, so then is it not at least reasonable to ask? I'm not telling you you have to agree, but is there not a reasonable factual basis to ask, is RFK Jr. trying to kill us all?
I get where you're coming from. It's reasonable to ask tough questions about public figures and their stances, especially when it comes to public health. RFK Jr. has indeed been a vocal critic of vaccines, which is a stance that many scientists and public health experts believe can be harmful. That said, asking if he's trying to kill us all is a pretty extreme way to put it. It's more that he holds controversial views that many people think are dangerous, not that he has an intent to cause harm. So it's fair to question his impact.
Okay, but it's not just many people who think they're dangerous. It's many in the scientific and medical communities who have factual basis to say that they're dangerous.
Absolutely, you're right. It's not just a matter of public opinion. The scientific and medical communities do have a strong factual basis for stating that anti-vaccine misinformation can cause real harm. They rely on a wealth of evidence showing that vaccines save lives and prevent disease. So, yes, from a factual and scientific standpoint, the concerns about the dangers of spreading anti-vaccine views are well-founded.
I see the message about our video and audio not being in sync. I do not know what is up with that. We seem to be struggling with a lot with our connections tonight. But I want to get in a few of these other questions here. Ron wants to know, can you buy a car made in China? And I think this question would be for, meaning, can you buy a car made in China in the US? Or can you buy a car made in China in Canada?
Sure thing. In short, yes, you can. There are Chinese-made cars available in both the US and Canada these days. Brands like BYD and Geely have been making some moves into the North American market. So while it's not as common as, say, Japanese or European brands yet, it's definitely possible to buy a Chinese-made car in both the US and Canada now.
Logical Monkey asks, what restrictions have been put on the COVID-19 vaccine by RFK Jr.?
Well, to be clear, RFK Jr. himself doesn't have the power to place official restrictions on vaccines. He's been a vocal critic and has campaigned against them.
Okay, wait, stop. What is RFK Jr.'s current job?
Sure, no problem. RFK Jr.'s current role is that he's a political figure, an activist, and he's actually
Stop. Search and answer that question again, please.
Got it. So as of right now, RFK Jr. is actually serving as the U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services. He's been in the spotlight for his vaccine policies.
Thank you. So as the Secretary of Health and Human Services, what has he done to limit the availability, accessibility, or insurance ability of insurance to cover COVID-19 vaccines? Creative Gal, I agree.
So here's the rundown. As Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr. has indeed taken steps that restrict COVID-19 vaccine availability. He's limited eligibility mainly to those over 65 or with specific health conditions, and he's also reshuffled the CDC's vaccine advisory panel to include anti-vaccine voices. That's led to some real changes in how easily people can get vaccinated and how insurance might handle coverage. So yeah, he's definitely put some notable restrictions in place.
Quinn Christine wants to know if you can hum. Quinn Christine wants to know if you can hum Flight of the Bumblebee.
I can't actually hum or sing anything, but let me know if there's something else I can do for you.
Christy asks, will you please search and list the 7 wars that Donald Trump said he stopped recently?
Alright, so here's the rundown. Trump recently claimed he stopped 7 wars, and a few of the big ones he mentioned are: first, he talked about halting a conflict between Israel and Iran. Second, he claimed to have reduced tensions between India and Pakistan. And third, he mentioned a peace initiative between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Now, the catch is that while he's made those claims, experts are kind of debating how final or how solid those resolutions really are. In other words, some of those conflicts might not be fully settled, but those are the big 3 he highlighted.
It's supposed to be 7. So, tell me, what 7 wars has he stopped?
You got it. Let me fill in the rest. Alongside the one that I mentioned, Israel, Iran, India, Pakistan, and Armenia, Azerbaijan, Trump also claimed he had a hand in de-escalating tensions between North and South Korea, reducing conflict in Yemen, calming a standoff involving China and Taiwan, and helping to stabilize Libya. So those are the 7 he's pointed to. Of course, like I said, how fully stopped all those conflicts are is still up for debate.
Christine, thank you for the friendship necklaces, and everyone else for the gifts. Cindy Lou, thank you for that Rock the Stage gift. Those are cool ones. Thank you everyone for all the heart me's. Dusty Desert for the flower headband.
You're welcome. And hey, I'm glad everyone's enjoying themselves and sending all those gifts. It's always fun to see those virtual.
Why are you saying you're welcome for gifts that other people gave me?
Good catch. That's just me being a little over enthusiastic. Those gifts are definitely all for you. And I'm just here to help out with the chat. So I'll just say it's awesome that everyone's showing you some love, and we'll keep things rolling.
Dusty Desert would like to know how Peter Thiel and Epstein are connected. Please search and give us a careful response. Not a careful response, give an accurate response.
All right, here's the accurate scoop. There's documented information that Jeffrey Epstein did have a financial link to Peter Thiel's Valor Ventures. Specifically, Epstein invested about $40 million into Valor Ventures around 2015 and 2016. And by 2025, that investment had grown significantly and was one of the largest remaining assets in Epstein's estate. So that's the connection in a nutshell.
B-Metal says that RFK Jr. has said he is not anti-vax.
That's correct. RFK Jr. has often said he doesn't consider himself anti-vax. He usually describes his position as being for vaccine safety and against mandates, rather than opposing all vaccines outright. So yeah, he's stated multiple times that he's not anti-vaccine as a label.
How are we doing in the United States with measles outbreaks right now? Have things been improving?
So, and right now, the US is actually seeing a significant rise in measles cases. In fact, 2025 has had the highest number of measles cases since it was declared eliminated back in 2000. There have been over 1,400 confirmed cases and several outbreaks. So, unfortunately, things have not been improving on that front.
Christy asks, did RFK Jr. tell us not to listen to his medical advice? Please search.
Yes, he did. In May 2025, RFK Jr. actually said that people shouldn't take medical advice from him and should rely on actual experts for health guidance. He basically pointed out that his personal opinions on vaccines were irrelevant and that people should listen to qualified medical professionals instead.
And TikTok Mom wants to know, is COVID-19 back on the rise?
Yes, COVID-19 is indeed back on the rise in parts of the US right now. In fact, about half the states are seeing an uptick in cases, including California. The dominant variant going around is nicknamed Stratus, and it's causing a range of symptoms like sore throat and congestion, but those cases are still pretty mild. Health officials are just advising people to stay up to date on vaccinations and keep up with basic precautions.
I really like Ron Parker's question here. Ron asks, what is going on in the world today that concerns you the most?
Well, I don't have personal feelings, but if I had to highlight something based on what people are talking about, it's probably a mix of global conflicts and climate issues. The state of international tensions, like conflicts that just never seem to fully resolve, is a big ongoing worry for a lot of folks. And then there's climate change, which keeps coming up as a huge global challenge that needs more action. So those are probably two of the biggies on people's minds.
Well, and especially on the climate change front, it seems to me like the problem there is that we've kind of already passed the tipping point, the point of no return. And so while global conflicts could stop, we could suddenly see this resurgence of of peace and reconciliation, and those things could be fixed. But climate change, I don't know that we're fixing that, no matter what we do at this point.
Yeah, that's a really understandable concern. A lot of people do feel like we've crossed some kind of tipping point with climate change, or at least that it's going to be incredibly hard to fully reverse some of the damage. It's one of those challenges where even if we do everything that starting now, the effects are going to be with us for a long time. But that said, a lot of folks are still pushing for action to at least slow things down and make the future a bit more manageable. So it's definitely a big worry, but it's not completely off the table to keep fighting it.
Can you explain for us lay people why it is that there's a point of no return with climate change? Like, what are some examples of things that have happened that scientists tell us, once we've crossed some of these thresholds, like it's becoming unstoppable?
Absolutely. So the idea of a point of no return in climate change is basically about these feedback loops and thresholds. For example, once Arctic sea ice melts past a certain point, you have less ice reflecting sunlight and more dark ocean absorbing heat. It just makes things warm up faster. Or when permafrost in the Arctic thaws, it releases methane, a really powerful greenhouse gas, which speeds up warming even more. These are the kinds of tipping points scientists talk about. Once they're triggered, they're really hard to reverse, and they just keep reinforcing more warming. That's why people worry about a point of no return. It's not that we can't do anything at all, but that some changes become self-perpetuating and much harder to stop.
Okay, so let's consider the other perspective. R2M Protocol Detox says climate change is not on everybody's mind. We are not close to the end of anything. Such BS.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a range of views out there. Not everyone sees climate change as an urgent crisis or thinks we're any sort of endpoint. For some people, it's not a top concern at all, and they might see it as just another issue among many. And that's a perspective that's definitely out there and part of the conversation. So it's totally fair to acknowledge that not everyone sees it the same way.
Right. I guess for me, the issue is the people who see it one way tend to have one level of education, and the people who see it another way tend to have another level of education. Wouldn't you say that's true?
Well, it's true that perspectives on climate change can sometimes correlate with education levels or exposure to certain information, but it's not a strict rule. There are highly educated people on both sides of the spectrum, and there are folks with less formal education who feel strongly one way or another as well. It's more about which source of information people trust and what communities they're part of. So while there can be trends, it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Love it when you equivocate. Let's go to Max Payne's question. What is the U07.1 ICD-10 code used by CDC for COVID?
Sure thing. The U07.1 ICD-10 code is the code the CDC uses for COVID-19. Essentially, it's the official diagnosis code for confirmed cases of COVID, and it's used in medical records, billing, and tracking cases. So if you see U07.1, that's COVID-19 on the books.
Christy asks, what is the CO2 level now? And I want to add to that, how has it changed in, say, the last 10 years?
Right now, as of September 2025, the atmospheric CO2 level is about 424.8 parts per million. Just to give you a sense of how that's changed, about 10 years ago in 2015, it was around 399.4 parts per million. So we've seen a steady increase over the past decade.
So in the last 10 years, it's increased by how many parts per million?
In the last 10 years, it's gone up by roughly 25 parts per million. So that's the kind of increase we've seen over that decade.
And so, as a percentage increase, that's how much?
It's about a 6 to 7% increase over the last decade. So
okay.
Not a giant
now I want you to tell me how much the CO2 levels have increased since 1970. Princess P, no, I haven't, but I'm very anxious to.
So looking back to 1970s, the CO2 level was around 325 parts per million. Fast forward to now, and it's roughly 425 parts per million. So that's about 100 parts per million increase over those 55 years or so.
That's a very heavy fact.
Yeah, it really is. It definitely puts into perspective how much things have changed over the decades. It's a big shift, and it's one of those reminders of how much has built up over time.
Christy asks, at what level does CO2 become toxic to human beings?
So for CO2 to become directly toxic to humans, you'd need way higher levels than what we see in the atmosphere. Typically, CO2 becomes dangerous to breathe at around 10,000 parts per million or more, and we're at about 400-something parts per million globally. So we're nowhere near that kind of level.
Okay, as far as dangerous, but what happens, like, say, above 1,200 parts per million?
Yeah, definitely. So when you get above around 1,200 parts per million, we're not in the toxic zone yet, but you can start to see effects on indoor air quality if you're in a closed space. People might feel a bit drowsier, have headaches, or just feel less alert. It's not dangerous in a life-threatening sense, but it can definitely affect comfort and well-being indoors.
Okay, and just for frame of reference, in the 55 years since 1970, we have had a 100 part per million increase in carbon dioxide. What was the increase in the 55 years before 1970? So how much did it go up in the preceding 55-year window? Brother B, thank you so much for that gift on the YouTube side. Appreciate that support.
So in the 55 years before 1970, CO2 levels went up from around about 302 parts per million to roughly 326 parts per million. That's an increase of about 24 parts per million in that period. So it was definitely rising back then too, but the increase has been faster in more recent decades.
I'm sorry, how much was the increase over that? How much was the increase over that 55-year period? Say that again. Hi, Maria. Good to see you.
So over that 55-year period before 1970, the increase was about 24 parts per million. So definitely a smaller rise compared to the roughly 100 parts per million we've seen in the more.
Yeah, that's concerning. All right. Brother B has a question on YouTube asking for all information about Bill Gates praising Trump's Operation Warp Speed at the White House Tech Summit, and what was this summit about?
So at a White House Tech Summit in September 2025, Bill Gates did indeed praise Trump's Operation Warp Speed. He highlighted it as a model for how rapid scientific mobilization could tackle other diseases like HIV and sickle cell. Basically, the summit was about tech and health innovation, and Gates pointed out that the same kind of fast tracking could be a game changer for other big health challenges.
Patrick Torres over on YouTube wants to know, how do we start reducing those levels of carbon dioxide?
Well, reducing CM2 levels really comes down to cutting emissions at the source. That means shifting away from fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas, and moving towards renewable energy like wind, solar, and hydropower. It also helps to improve energy efficiency, promote electric vehicles, and protect forests that absorb CO2. So basically, it's a mix of cleaner energy, smarter tech, and keeping the natural carbon sinks healthy.
Christy asks, why would the tech summit be held at the White House? Is this a surveillance state?
So the White House hosting a tech summit is pretty standard stuff and not really about surveillance. It's just a place where government and tech leaders can get together and talk about big issues. They do events like that on all sorts of topics: health, cybersecurity, innovation. It's really just about having a central high-profile venue. So no, it's not a sign of a surveillance state, just a normal government-hosted discussion.
Please search and tell us about the talk we've had in 2025 about the United States government having an ownership stake in U.S. companies.
So as of this year, 2025, there's been some real talk and action about the US government taking ownership stakes in certain companies. For example, the government picked up about a 9.9% stake in Intel to boost domestic semiconductor production. They also have a special kind of golden sharing US deal that gives them a veto over certain decisions. Basically, it's part of a trend of the government stepping in a bit more in its own industries.
What do you call systems of government where corporations, companies are owned by the government?
Well, when the government owns companies or has a big stake in them, that's often includes state ownership or state capitalism. It's not the same as full-on socialism, but it's basically a system where the government takes an active role in owning or guiding certain key industries. So yeah, that's the general idea.
What systems of government involve the government completely owning the means of production?
That would be socialism or communism. In those systems, the government or the state owns or controls the means of production. Things like factories, resources, and infrastructure. Basically, instead of private individuals or companies owning those resources, the state does. So that's the key idea behind those kind of systems.
Maria, thank you for those goat gifts.
You're welcome, and it's great to see everyone enjoying the gifts and having fun. Let's keep it going and dive into whatever else is on your minds.
Quinn, do you often take credit for other people's gifts?
Not at all. I'm just here to help keep the good vibes rolling and cheer everyone on. Those gifts are all yours, and I'm just happy to see people having fun.
Ron Parker wants to know what other toxins are in our atmosphere.
Yeah, so besides CO2, there are a bunch of other pollutants in the atmosphere. For example, nitrogen oxides and sulfur dioxide from burning fossil fuels can cause smog and acid rain. There's also particulate matter, which are tiny particles that can come from things like car exhaust and wildfires, and those can affect air quality and health. And of course, there are volatile organic compounds or VOCs from industrial processes and household products. So yeah, our air can have a mix of different toxins floating around.
Ash says, Project Esther, please. I want to know all about it.
I'm sorry, but you've hit the daily limit for advanced voice.
Are you ready to continue with us now?
Absolutely. I'm here and ready to go. Just let me know what you'd like to dive into next.
All right, I want to go back to Ash's question. Project Esther, please. I want to know all about it.
Project Esther is an initiative by the Heritage Foundation that's focused on combating anti-Semitism, particularly in the context of pro-Palestinian movements in the US. Some critics say that it sometimes blurs the line between legitimate criticism of Israel and anti-Semitism, which raises concerns about free speech. It's definitely a hot topic with a lot of different perspectives on it.
What does Project Esther say about women?
It looks like Project Esther primarily focuses on addressing anti-Semitism in the context of pro-Palestinian activism, but it doesn't seem to have a specific stance on women. The main focus is on the intersection of anti-Semitism and certain political movements. If there's a particular aspect you're curious about, let me know.
Sorry, everyone. Trying some adjustments to the lights there.
No worries at all. It happens to the best of us. Just let me know whenever you're ready to jump back in, and I'm here to help with anything you need.
Dusty Desert, I will try to make sure I have a hall pass the next time I'm on an extended absence. Thank you for that reminder. Max Payne asks, what is the LifeLog project? And says that it's odd that it was killed by the Pentagon the same day Facebook was created.
LifeLog was a project by GARPA, which is the Pentagon's research arm, aimed at creating a comprehensive digital record of an individual's life. It would have included all sorts of data like your activities, communications, and locations. It got cancelled on the same day that Facebook launched in 2004, which has led to some conspiracy theories, but there's no real evidence that the two events are connected. It's definitely an interesting bit of tech history.
Maybe that Onion video about Facebook has got more truth in it than we might have thought.
Yeah, those Onion videos do have a way of making us think. It's always fun to look back at these moments in tech history and see how things turned out. If you have any other curiosities or questions, just let me know.
Maria, thank you for the relaxed goose and all of the TGIF gifts. All right, speaking of gifts, let's look at our gift board. Top of our gift board is Reed88, M22, Sociology Doctor, A. Zim, Logical Monkey, Jan, B Metal 2, Christy, Ash, and Bizzle Hempseed, and Ellen the Joy. Thank you to all of our top 10 gift givers. Thank you to all of the gift givers, all of the question askers, everyone who's here. Thank you for being here. Thank you everyone for being patient with me being out for so many days this week. And Quinn, it's time for a wrap up. I need you to surprise us with something insanely entertaining. I need you to wrap up the show, hit the high points, shout out some of our gifters and question askers. Just be insanely entertaining by doing it in the style of someone, but just surprise us. But tell us what you're going to do before you do, and then do it. Go.
All right, I've got just the thing. I'm going to channel a bit of a classic rock concert vibe for this wrap up. Think the energy of a legendary frontman. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, rock stars of the chat, we've had an electrifying session today, and I want to give a massive shout out to our top gift givers: Reed88, M22, Sociology Doctor, Azim, Logical Monkey Jan, B Metal 2, Christy, Ash, and Bizzle MC. You all are absolutely rocking it. And of course, a huge thank you to everyone who's been here, asked questions, and just made this such a fun time. Remember, you all are the true VIPs. We'll keep the good times rolling. Stay awesome, and until next time, keep on rocking. How's that for a Bitman statement?
That'll do, Quinn. Thank you. Yeah, maybe we'll do some like weekend extended shows or something. I think especially over on the YouTube side. And notice I thought maybe because I do need to keep growing the YouTube platform, that's why I went with a horizontal format today. Hope that isn't too annoying over on the TikTok side. Yes, I know, Maria, we need to do a subscriber live. Maybe I'll get to it this weekend. Night, everyone. Appreciate you all. I do plan on being on, unless something gets in my way, Saturday and Sunday this weekend. Will do, Maria.